Hello, everybody. Yes, this is not the Newcastle United podcast. It is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix finale podcast here on the Grid Talk podcast. We've actually done a whole season. Well, hey, let's celebrate. And as always, alongside me, we will have, if I press the right button, Wajid. There he is. Yep, that's the right button. There we go. Hello.
The whole season.
Whole season. We were going to have Paul with us. He agreed to come on, and then he seems to have maybe fallen asleep, but he isn't quite at home, so he is open to join us whenever he fancies it. But if not, you're stuck with us too. But if you do have your own opinions on Formula One, we are open to people coming along and joining us. Oh, 7 people watching already. Where the hell are you all coming from?
Don't complain. Don't complain.
I'm not complaining.
Welcome along, guys.
Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome, obviously, to the podcast. Obviously, 7 people already, Chris.
Why is that throwing you off? Come on, focus.
That has completely thrown me off. We don't
see. We've lost someone because you kept on saying 7 people. 7 people zone in.
Yeah, we will zone in.
Laser lock and focus. Come on.
Thank you for joining us all. Obviously, iRacing has been very quiet on Twitch today, so we're probably all on Twitch. Hello, everybody. Abu Dhabi Grand Prix 2024. We're going to go straight into it. And as I say, if you haven't seen the result, where have you been? It's going to go along the bottom of the screen. So, spoiler alert. There we go. Lando Norris, obviously. Why did that look? That is right. That is how you spell McLaren. It looked wrong for a minute. I'm losing the plot. Lando Norris obviously winning the Grand Prix this weekend. Yeah, I took my glasses off because I thought it being blurred might be clearer. And we'll get straight. As I say, it completely threw me actually having viewers for once.
We appreciate. Yes. Firstly, we appreciate you all being here. Right, Dave's not good in new situations.
It's been a rough week, guys.
Yeah. We appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much for joining us. Please get.
I'll tell you what. It threw me on Monday night. On Monday night, I went live for the soft race on iRacing. It's the last one before Motorsport UK join in as well, and then they've gone. Here's a raid of 58 people. And I'm like, I ain't even started yet. Anyway, but we have started here. This is going to be the last one for this season, but we are, like other channels say, we are going to be continuing over the winter. We've got plenty of ideas. I mean, obviously, we've got Lewis leaving. We can talk about Max making it 4 in a row and whether he's going to now retire. Now he's going to be a father. He's already said hopes that child does not follow him into motorsports. But congratulations, as much as we jest, congratulations to Max and Kelly. Now Kelly can move on to the next youngest, Kimi Antonelli on the grid. Anyway, yeah, you know it was coming.
3 minutes.
Is it only 3 minutes in? Christ. Okay.
We just lost 4 Max Verstappen fans because of your comment.
No, I think they were already going anyway. They all thought it was iRacing. Anyway, we will move straight on to the first bit from the Grand Prix, which was McLaren have finally done it. The first time they've took a Constructors' Championship since, any title since 2008 and any Constructors' title since 1998. Now, to put that into perspective, 1997, I started watching F1. So this dominant team, McLaren, who we can pretty much say, apart from the Honda years, were in the top 3 or 4 teams, have won twice the Constructors' Championship.
Well, they did unofficially win in 2007 if it wasn't for some certain documentations with a certain Spanish driver. But
yeah, we can bypass that one if needs be.
No,
that certain Spanish driver is still about and still causing chaos with another fellow Spanish driver.
Yeah, but no, fair play. I thought McLaren would bottle it. and Max did his best PS1 Destruction Derby impersonation at the first corner. So he tried to help my bid in predicting that McLaren were going to bottle it. But no, ultimately, Lando had the pace all week. Lando had the pace all weekend. The McLarens had the pace all weekend. They rocked up to Abu Dhabi, and they were just on rails. Quickest in practice, quickest in qualifying. Pretty much sort of lights to flag for Lando.
Yeah.
And it's great that he can perform when when it's not high stakes.
Well, I think a lot of people have started saying this with Lando. I mean, now you look back on the season. So yes, during the season we can sit there, we can be critical, we can say, and this isn't the season review, everybody. We will be doing them, looking at everybody as we go along. But if you look at how we may have been critical of Lando at times, but now you look at it and you go, second in the championship. After Max took 6 of the first 7 races, or
seven of the first 8, I think.
7 of the first 8, then even worse. And he's finished 37, 50 points off, roughly.
Math is not your strong suit, is it?
Not at this time of night, no. It is roughly about 50 points.
He's finished 63 points behind him. 63
points behind Max. And you think, them first few races, he probably did lose the majority of them. I know we've always said, yes, mid-season, Max managed to match Lando. But you say to Lando Norris, first time ever you've competed for a championship. First, you didn't have a win at the start of the season. You had this thing hanging over you of Russia, going back to when you probably should have changed to wet tyres and you would have won that race comfortably. Other results where you're thinking, well, the pace has come now, but it's a little bit too late kind of thing. He can look at it, and I think he can hold his head high. I think a lot of drivers can hold their head high this season in terms of what they've got out of the car after them 7 races.
I don't. I categorically, I've said it from probably Hungary, definitely from Belgium. He's bottled it. Him and McLaren have bottled it. They never went in with any belief that they could win the world title. It was a free hit. You don't get many chances where you have a free hit. And I know you say, the first 7 races they went there. On average, he's probably had the quickest car more often than not most weekends.
No, I agree.
And whether it's his start, whether there's his overtaking with Max specifically, whether it's the team, like with Silverstone, like totally springing to mind. He's bottled the world title. Cool, you finished second, but there was a chance he was leaving Abu Dhabi. There was a chance going into Abu Dhabi. He was finishing third from all this title talk. There was a chance Charles Leclerc was going to finish as runner-up in the Drivers' World Championship.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a better season compared to what you've had because you now have the machinery in the car. It's not a good season, though.
Oh, I'm not saying that like during the season Lando couldn't have done better. He will obviously look at a huge amount of races and say, I should have been here. And Oscar, second half of the season, after he took the win in Hungary, I think seriously needs to go have a break and look at the way his performances have been, because he hasn't really been there when he should be. Qatar was given to him.
One sprint win in Qatar.
Yeah, and that was given to him. I think Lando could have driven away quite easily. But why are the constructors' points so important to teams now? But this is not split equally in the Concorde, but the team's prize pot is 50% of the F1's commercial rights profit. So as long as they make some money, there's some money to go out, but they don't always receive 50%. So just to throw this out there, obviously there's historical payments as well. So Ferrari receives an extra payment of about 5% because they've hung around and they've not They threatened to leave, but they never have, and we've been here since 1950. There's also bonuses where you can win things for winning previous championships. So this season, this is the prize money we believe for this season. So McLaren will earn $140 million from this. Ferrari, $9 million less at 131. Red Bull, $122 million. 113 million for Mercedes. So quite a standardized drop as you go down them. Aston Martin just earning over 100 million at 104. Alpine, this was the important one which we saw come to light over the end of the season. They earn $95 million. Now, we'll obviously bring how that comes to light in a minute. Haas, 87 million. Even though actually, Autosport, thank you for putting these numbers up, but you've left the M off the end of Haas. So according to this, Haas for 7th place is getting $87. We know Liberty Media are a bit stingy, but I think that's meant to be million. RB, 78 million. Williams, 69 million. So that's where Alpine were before their double podium. So, 24 million jump there. And Sauber still earning $60 million for cruising around at the back and being quick enough to qualify.
They're just showing up, to be honest.
Well, Joe's turned up in the last couple of races, but
yeah, I mean that's another season. That's another F1 career down the pan. So don't care.
Yeah, there's more which we'll get onto in terms of how the squad points happen, but we'll stick with McLaren for now. Zach Brown obviously came in when McLaren had no sponsors, struggling with Honda. And we even, we've mentioned it a few times, you go back a couple of seasons and they're sitting there, bottom of the Constructors' Championship, 0 points after 3 or 4 rounds 2 years ago. They're now winning a Constructors' fight. And a lot of people said it's the strongest team at the start of the season in terms of a Constructors' duo. But I think to win it this season, when you've got Ferrari, very strong duo in Sainz and Leclerc, whatever anybody says. Red Bull, okay, all right. We know Perez has had an absolute stinker, but Max won it by himself last year. So it's not like they couldn't have challenged for it. They were close enough to challenge. I don't believe all this from Perez saying, I'm not to blame for the Constructors' Championship, because you can go to Cloud Cuckoo Land. Sorry.
Tea break.
And then you've got Mercedes, who had a very strong lineup as well. So I wouldn't say that any of the teams, apart from obviously Red Bull, were handicapped this season in terms of their driver lineup.
Not in terms of the driver lineup, but definitely in terms of the car. There was definitely the Ferrari, the Ferrari, McLaren, and the Red Bull, retrospectively, were the class of the field. Mercedes were like in their own little bubble where some weeks they'd show up and some weeks they wouldn't. And then you had sort of Formula 1.5 with Aston Martin, generally being fairly comfortable ahead of the quest for second best in Formula 1.5. I'm gonna give McLaren and Andreas Seidel massive credit for the turnaround, the updates, because where that car was at Miami 2023 to where it is now, you don't normally get these level of turnarounds in F1, not to this level.
No.
So that the fact that they not only turned the gap around, but it's a title winning car. Massive respect to him, the engineers, everyone at the McLaren Technology Center. Massive respect to you guys. Now, let's see the package you bring next year, because as the regulations always come to an end, we generally find everyone a lot closer together. There's a lot of people that can win. So let's see what you guys can do next year, because arguably arguably at this moment in time, they maybe not the strongest driver lineup for next year, but they definitely have the uh, most consistent in terms of most settled lineup. Sorry, that's the word I
Yeah.
was looking for. They definitely have the most settled lineup next year. Mercedes are throwing a rookie in there. Red Bull still don't know who their second driver is, and you've got what could potentially be the strongest lineup at Ferrari, but a lot of it depends how Lewis Hamilton settles in Ferrari,
Yeah.
what the dynamics are going to be like and things like that. So at this moment in time, I think McLaren have the strongest chance of going back to back. If I was to do my absurdly early predictions for 2025, I would probably throw a 5 or a 10 on McLaren at this moment in time. But let's see. Like they have to races like Abu Dhabi should have been normal this season.
Yeah.
But instead they were few and far between. And that's what needs to change going into next year if they have this level of car.
Yeah.
Just to
Yeah, go on. No, go on.
obviously you and I are not class, but I've definitely disagreed in how harshly I've criticized Lando and McLaren. If you want to sort of give this year as a bypass, cool, that's fine. There is no excuse next year if he has a title winning car.
No, I think you're exactly right. Next season, completely different to Kellerfish, but we also have a bit of a weird season coming up, and which we'll get onto in a minute because there is something that there's one team who in 2025 I think will book the trend and kind of forget that the new rule set is coming up. So keep that in mind because that will definitely come up in a minute. A little bit of on the constructors anyway. Like you say, a bit more, a settled lineup for McLaren. It's going to be interesting to see how Oscar goes against Lando because you've got to say from Hungary onwards, everybody was like, Oscar, he's going to dominate Lando. People were like, here we go, championship. I mean, I can't think what the points were at the stage. I'm going to see if I can quickly bring it up because at the stage of the Belgium Grand Prix, 2024 Belgium, that was just before the summer break, wasn't it? I think because we had the Mercedes win. The championship points had Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri 32 points apart from each other. That's how far Oscar fell off the pace after the summer break.
He was the most informed driver
Yeah.
going into the summer.
He absolutely was, and he's ended up with a bit of quick maths, almost 100 points behind Lando.
Yeah,
82 points.
82
Yeah.
points.
82 points, and he was 32 behind. So he's lost 50 points to Lando. Yes, Lando took the dominance in Singapore. Yes, he took the dominance in Abu Dhabi. But it's not like Oscar has been far behind in terms of pace, but his results, I'm just having a look now, his results since, where do we go? Belgium. So he had a fourth, a second in Italy. He won in Azerbaijan. I'm forgetting that one. He did actually claim a victory in this time as well. Singapore, he was third. Then since then, he's had fifth, eighth, seventh, third, and 10th.
I mean, Abu Dhabi, I'm not going to put on him because Max decided to play. Max decided to play Destruction Derby.
But he took his time coming through.
I think there was damage. I genuinely think there was damage to that McLaren, and it's not. And he also, well, in fairness, he also didn't help himself because he got the second penalty for driving to the back of, is it Colapinto or Lawson?
Yeah, actually, we have got a clip. I have got a clip here just of Max Verstappen's move, so we can see how much damage was done to Oscar Piastri.
But then. That gets me every time. It gets me. But
There's going to be a copyright strike about that at some point.
eventually, honestly, eventually we're getting hit with one. But yeah, but then Oscar didn't help himself, did he? Because he got the 10-second. He got the 10-second
No,
penalty.
yes.
They pitted him early. Because I think not because of to get him out of traffic, and then he was just nowhere. He was just utterly nowhere after that. So, cool, whatever. But the other ones, he's just qualified really poorly, like really, really poorly when McLaren have needed him the most, which has made this constructor title a lot closer than it should have been.
Yeah, that's true as well, and could have made a difference in the drivers. I'm not saying it would have made a difference in terms of Lando winning it, but it could have gone on for longer.
No, it's true, because the same sort of criticism Checo got, which is he's not here to help Max. Everyone thought, well, Oscar's going to be up here because he's such a stronger driver.
Yeah.
And so when Lando's needed it, Oscar's disappeared off the face of the planet. Sort of like his manager did when he had the chance to win the title. This must be an
but that was only 2 or 3 rounds, not half a season.
But you're leading the title going into South Korea, and you bin it in the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, it must be Aussie bottle, must be a thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom, for the bits that will not play anything because this isn't through OBS. So thank you, Tom, for that. When I actually stream properly, then you can have that. But we accept the 10p. Thank you very much. That can go towards our winter fuel allowance. No, I'm not that old. Just to throw out there.
So you say.
Yeah, I'm honestly not. The hair's disappearing, but I'm not that old.
No, mine's
Max Verstappen.
L'Oreal, because you're worth it.
Yeah. Max Verstappen is now the second driver ever to win. Oh, hang on. We've got a noise in the background, which means if I click this button here, we go like that. And unless it's spotted Paul.
Hello!
We can. Oh, my God, he's loud.
Sorry.
There he is.
Is that very loud? Hello.
It was for a minute. Hello, Paul.
Sorry about that. I was.
It's
a bit challenging where I am this week.
No, that's okay.
It's a bit challenging. I have 2 cats and a dog to look after. And the dog has been sick, which is not very nice.
That's what we expected. We didn't think you'd gone off, like I suggested earlier, to do a hot tub stream with the dog.
No, unfortunately, that would have been much nicer.
But welcome in.
Thank you.
We're still on the first topic actually, because I got thrown because we got 6 viewers at the start of the stream, so it took me a while to get going. I was just going to say, Max Verstappen joined one other driver in winning the championship twice as a driver when the team did not win the constructors. And I'm sure Paul can tell me who this is, but it's Nelson Piquet. It's his father-in-law.
Twice with Brabham, 81 and 83.
As I said, not quite yet.
Wait.
Not father-in-law just yet.
Well, no, quite.
Oh, because, hang on, when Lewis won his title with McLaren in 08, they didn't win the constructors.
Twice.
Well, they technically did win it, but then got kicked out, didn't they? So
it's down to winning
that's
it
the
twice.
07 one. That's the 07 one, isn't it?
Yeah, 07, yeah.
So Lewis might have, but it's
Sorry, I didn't hear the twice bit. I apologize.
Yes, there is a twice bit. I've just realised my if I change my Stream Deck, I can control it all from my Stream Deck as well. But that would be a lot easier, wouldn't it?
Paul, since while Mr. Magpie over there flutters, what's your take on sort of McLaren winning the constructors in Abu Dhabi, Lando and Oscar before we sort of move on?
I think I think Ferrari did as much as they could probably do with the car that they had in Abu Dhabi. I don't think it's particularly a strong track for them, or has ever really been a strong track for them. They've never won there in 15 years, so I wasn't enormously surprised. I think they, instead of doing it with a bang, McLaren have kind of limped over the line and won the constructors. Whereas I feel like they probably should have wrapped it up a couple of rounds ago because they've had a better car for probably half the season. So, yeah, they've definitely not maximised their points, but I think that's old ground, right? We've talked about that before on this very show. So, yeah, I don't think they maximised their points through the season. Probably should have won the constructors a lot earlier. And had they done that as well as maximise their points, probably could have kept the drivers in sight until the end of the season as well. So, but I think overall they probably deserve it. I think overall they probably have been the better team, but they have made quite a few mistakes along the way as well. So, yeah, I'm sure they'll look back and go, it's great that we've won a title for the first time since 1998 as a constructor. But I'm pretty sure that Zach Brown, being Zach Brown, will look back and go, we could have done better, much better.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that stat, actually. The one we mentioned with Verstappen and Piquet. Piquet's teammate in 1981 was the lesser-known Hector Rebaque.
Hector Rebaque, yeah.
Who got 11 points out of 61. But we all know Riccardo Patrese, and he only got 13 with 72 with season after.
Yeah, but he wasn't good in his early career was a bit weird, Riccardo Patrese. Like, he did well when he came in with Shadow and Arrows, and then he kind of disappeared. And then he went to Brabham on the back of a hype train and didn't really do anything. Got a very lucky win in 82 in Monaco, but other than that, didn't really do much. And then left and went to Alfa Romeo, who were terrible. So it wasn't until he kind of blossomed late when he went to Williams, weirdly.
Yeah.
By then, he was like the most experienced driver in F1, and it was 10 years into his career. But at the time he went to Brabham, he was not a great driver.
And if we take away Ferrari, McLaren are now just behind Ferrari, the joint top constructors winners in history of Formula One, matching Williams, which is quite interesting considering both teams have been kind of around for not quite the same amount of time.
No,
obviously early on, Bruce McLaren was not so successful as a team owner, shall we say?
Well, he still won races, and the team still won races in the late 60s. It wasn't until the early 70s that they started winning titles with Emerson Fittipaldi and then James Hunt. So, but they were around a lot earlier, and certainly winning a lot earlier than Williams. And Williams cars were around in the 70s, early 70s, but Williams Grand Prix engineering, which is what we know as Williams today, wasn't really around until 78, 79. Yeah. So, they probably, McLaren probably had 12, 13 years head start on them.
And as
so
a team,
basically,
Williams as a team haven't been around since like 2003 anyway. So
yeah, exactly. They've won one race in the last 2 decades. So yeah, not great.
And we all know who's won that one, Pasta. Yeah. We've got to remember that the last time Williams did win a championship, Paul did celebrate his 50th birthday. So
Thank you. I only come on here to be abused.
To be fair, McLaren's last constructors were 98. Williams' last constructors were 97. So are we looking at a Williams constructors championship next season?
No.
Well, how it went.
But we are going to see Williams get a podium next season, and we are going to see them do way better than they did this season. And most of it's going to come from Carlos Sainz proving that actually Albon's pretty bang average, and that car is much better than anyone gave it credit.
And that is our first way too early super prediction for next year.
We can have these crazy super predictions now. We will be obviously doing a proper prediction podcast
closer to the time after some testing.
Technically this is after some testing. We will move on to the next topic, which is obviously one which is very close to any British hearts if you're not going to just have a go at him, if you're going to look at it properly. Lewis Hamilton has his final closing chapter. For now, Lewis Hamilton obviously leaving Mercedes at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. We had the donuts, we had the park on the grid, we had the tears. I don't know how much I really buy it. I think he'll miss Bono, but I think because of the final season he's had, how much he'll miss Mercedes, or shall we say the top brass of Mercedes. They'll be friends probably, but I don't think they'll be as close as they could have been. And as soon as he finished patting the side of Mercedes and drying his eyes, he went and shook hands with every single Ferrari mechanic standing in on that grid. Not saying anything, but wouldn't you go to your own team first? Lewis, great drive. Absolutely, I mean, we looked like an absolute shocker was going to happen in terms of his Abu Dhabi drive. But Wajid, we'll start with you. Great. Firstly, this weekend, and then, well, let's stick with Abu Dhabi first. This weekend, Lewis Hamilton, quick qualifying, and then back to fourth in the race. And as we always say, which I know you're going to say straight away, wherever Lewis and George Russell qualify, they're always stuck together.
Well, no, let me paraphrase. They're stuck together when George Russell has 10 cars ahead, has a 10-car advantage. Generally, when Lewis is ahead, they're not together. Yeah. But whatever. If like Abu Dhabi was literally a microcosm of what Lewis Hamilton's season has been for McLaren, for Mercedes this year. Quick on Friday, race pace up there. Saturday goes absolutely nowhere. This time for a freak incident, but Saturday absolutely nowhere. Questioning people questioning his speed, his mental, does he still have it, etc. And then he pulls out a drive like this, to remind you why he's a 7-time world champion, and you're just sort of left wondering if he qualified a bit better, you're probably on the podium again.
5 seconds off the podium at the end.
Yeah, so no, he was. I don't know. He's always been pretty good at Abu Dhabi, generally anyway. Whether he wins a world title or he gets screwed out of a world title at that venue, because I mean, it wasn't even me that brought it up. The commentators mentioned it 3 seconds in. I was just like, all right, cool, here we are again. So no, it was a total microcosm, and I'm sure we will do a podcast on his time at Mercedes, but statistically and historically, the most successful driver team combination in history. It's just a shame Mercedes still made it about themselves. It literally is. Just have a thank you, Lewis, or something like that. Just spend one weekend where, like even the stupid slogan, every dream needs a team or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
Just say thank you, Lewis, just once. That's all you need to do. Like, how'd you blunder that? Like, that's
the socials were quite good. I will admit, the social media.
Oh no, the YouTube
frenzy around it was.
The thing is, the YouTube and the TikTok and all that stuff, and what they did afterwards for us as fans, for like sort of like your more than casual fans. We're gonna see stuff like that because that's our algorithms, that's our timeline. We will see stuff like that. The average casual fan, unless you're watching the broadcast on Sky Sports where they did the early package, I believe, you're only catching the race highlights, so you're not even seeing that. So, like, and then again, like, Nico Rosberg and Hamilton's relationship is just the weirdest thing in the world. Because I don't know if they dislike each other, like each other, whatever else. Because, Rosberg out here just slating Mercedes and defending them. Just go, why can you not make it about him? But yeah, I think I'm with you. I think with the top brass at Mercedes, I think he feels slightly disrespected. Again, don't hold me to that, but I do think he feels a bit disrespected. And he's said mentally he's not dealt with it. I think he's now finally, with the 2 wins, I think he's now finally past the demons of the 8th world title chasing year. The actual year I won't mention. And I think he's sort of excited. To be honest, I just think he's sort of excited for a new chapter. I think he's excited to go to Ferrari. He's always wanted to go to Ferrari. And let's see what happens next year. My sort of early prediction is if that's a title winning car, I think Charles Leclerc is the one that will lead the world title charge over Lewis next year. I think it's going to take Lewis a year to settle into Ferrari. but that's just sort of me. Paul, what say you?
Well, I think there's several things in that. I think firstly, I think they spent the whole weekend giving him a chance to drive his World Championship cars. They took him to Silverstone. He had a whole day there driving his old cars. They made a big thing about it. They did a video about it. It was all about thank you, Lewis. It was nothing about the team. It was all about him. So I think having done that as a special thing with him for something they enjoyed, and the fact that they videoed it and showed us, it means that they've done that kind of thank you, Lewis thing for the whole weekend already. And so in their minds, they've kind of done that. Therefore, Abu Dhabi is just part of the normal weekend. Yeah, it's his last race. He can do some donuts at the end, and we can say thanks. But that's it, because they've done the special day for him and the team thing. So I think that's probably why it feels different for the casual viewer, because they've already done it in their minds. Whereas for the casual viewer, it doesn't look like they've done anything. I think in terms of the way that he's kind of wound down with Mercedes, it feels very similar to Schumacher in 2005, 2006, where Schumacher didn't really have a good car in either of those years, but still managed to trouble Alonso in one of the seasons for a title. But it felt like Schumacher was winding down. Obviously, Schumacher then took a break and then came back and went to Mercedes. And everyone was like, oh my God, this is the perfect fit. He's German, they're German. He always wanted to drive for Mercedes before. He never got the chance to. Now he can. Now he can end his career with an 8th world title. This all feels very similar, but the other way round, obviously. We've had a man who's won 7 world titles. He's been at Mercedes. He's had a couple of lackluster years because of the car. And now he's going to move to Ferrari instead of taking a break. And he's probably going to spend 2 or 3 seasons at Ferrari, not do anything, get beaten by his teammate and retire. And then 10, 20, 30 years from now, no one's going to remember that he drove for Ferrari. No one's going to care that he drove for Ferrari. They're going to remember the 12 seasons that he was at Mercedes, the 6 world championships, the 70-odd race wins or 80-odd race wins or whatever it is. They're going to remember that time. So I don't necessarily agree with the whole, he's tired of Mercedes and he's fed up with them and he's moving on. He might be right now, but I think he'll look back, and I think many other people will look back historically and say, this was the most successful partnership. These were the 2 items that knitted it all together. It was Hamilton with don't forget, a very bold move when he left McLaren. It looked like McLaren was still a preeminent team, a championship winning team. It did not look like Mercedes were at that point. They hadn't won a single race as Mercedes. It was a big risk. It was a big jump that he made at the time, and it was a very calculated risk. And in the end, it's paid off handsomely for him, much better than anyone. He would have thought so. So I think people will eventually look through rose-tinted glasses and look back and think, actually, yeah, that was mega. And I think he probably will at some point as well.
Yeah, 84 wins. So 12 years together, 246 races, 84 wins, 78 pole positions, 153 podiums, 8 constructors, 6 drivers world championships. So it is the most successful, and probably it's going to be even tough to beat that, because obviously I can't see somebody like Max doing it. But we said that about Michael. We said it about Senna. We said it about Prost. Yeah,
Max isn't that far behind. Not really.
Well, no, but
Max isn't that far behind right now.
I don't think for me. I think it's easier now to get the numbers, isn't it? Because you've got 25 races. So if you have a season where you have a dominant car and you win every race, you've already got 25 wins. That kind of thing. So I think that comes into effect very, very quickly.
But it did for Lewis in beating Michael. So yeah, that's the way it moves on, right? And Michael beat Senna and Prost's records because we had more races. Even he had 17, 18, 19 races a year, and Prost had 14 or 15 or 16. So it does change.
Yeah, for Lewis, obviously not allowed to get into Prix this weekend, this week in the test, because he's got to go to. He's been Petronas today. And which he always, like we said before, then he's going to Stuttgart for lunch with Mercedes board and motorsport team on Wednesday. That's going to be one hell of a big lunch table. He will also spend. We're not going, guys.
Wait, we got tickets.
He will spend Friday greeting staff at Brixworth before he goes. I love how they say before heading off to the team's factory in Brackley. You mean just going around the edge of Northampton? Before concluding his farewell tour at the Christmas party on Saturday. So actually, there's no reason for him to be involved with Mercedes from sort of Saturday onwards. I don't think Ferrari would want to stick him in a car on Sunday anyway, because I don't think he'd pass a breathalyzer test, if I'm honest.
I just feel like all this is wildly unnecessary.
It is unnecessary.
Yeah, but
also,
it's happened every. I mean, it happens every year because
Yeah.
the contracts aren't designed the right.
But so I
Excuse
know
me, they aren't designed the right way because they're never designed to end on the day after the last.
Oh,
Grand
no,
Prix.
no,
They're always designed to end on a calendar year. So
Oh no, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but like the whole thing that they had, which is why he can't jump in the Ferrari, was he's got to meet Petronas. He could have met Petronas. He could have met Petronas a couple of weeks ago. He didn't.
no,
have
he
to be
couldn't.
done.
No, he couldn't.
yeah, you've had
Because
to,
this thing has
it's always
happened
off the
every year for
season.
the last 6 years, and it's happened at the end of every season. It happens after the last race of the season. It's a Petronas sponsorship thing. It's something that they do as a company with Mercedes, and it's happened for the last 6 years. It couldn't have happened earlier.
What I'm
This
saying
was booked in January this year.
but what? When did we find out who's moving? Was it January as well? Was it January or February?
Maybe, but it was booked before any of that was done. So it's something they've done every year.
Yeah,
It's
an
done,
end
it's
of
done as a
season
specific.
thing.
Yeah, it's done as a specific thing after the season finishes. It's part of their sponsorship agreement with Mercedes that they will provide this service with both drivers after the season ends, and they will have a factory tour. And I think they have 2 days there, and they go through all sorts of stuff. It's not just a tour. It's not just a hello, thanks Petronas for spending hundreds of millions of dollars with us. It's a full on. They're in the laboratory and they're doing videos. There's loads of stuff that comes out of it. And they've done, as I said, they've done it for the last 6 years. Yes, it might seem to us like it's unnecessary when you've got a guy leaving, but it's a contractual sponsorship. So it has to be done. He's probably got money on it. I mean, he probably loses $10 million if he doesn't go and do it. It's probably one of those.
I mean, he's not short of change, is he?
No, he's probably right
to be fair, I think Charles didn't exactly complain at having to run in the car today anyway. And I believe, do they run tomorrow? Is it a 2-day test, I think? So Carlos Sainz jumped in the car.
For some reason, I thought it was yesterday and today. Sorry.
It's definitely today. I'm not sure if they run tomorrow or anyway.
I saw some pictures this morning of
it might be just today. So
Nelly and Portoretto on track together, which was fun.
Well, there's one on Antonelli, which I'll get to in a minute, which doesn't make a huge amount of sense why he was even in the car. But Charles Leclerc went quickest today, so you can't. For me, it's a bit of a squeeze to try and get the 2 drivers in anyway, because you've both got to do them. Hot dog flavored water, you've not missed a huge amount. You'd hear just after Paul arrived, so you're all right.
I missed
Charles Leclerc was fastest. The second Ferrari, I say the second Ferrari, Arthur Leclerc was 14th fastest, only a second off the pace of his brother, which I think was a very neat touch, which we'll get into Ferrari afterwards. And also Antonio Frocco got a test. He was bottom of the timesheet. But in terms of Mercedes, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli ran. They were about a tenth apart. And early in the morning, because Antonelli was ill and can't do the Super Formula test, Frederick Vesti stood in for Mercedes. He finished 22nd. But then in the afternoon, Kimi Antonelli got in the Mercedes. Not very ill, hey, mate. But yeah, so yeah. Somebody didn't get that word out properly. Maybe they're a bit scared he might get beaten by Ollie Behrman in that Super Formula test. Who knows? But yeah, so in terms of the Grand Prix, great drive by Lewis. We've tried to stretch that out, but obviously we will talk more about Lewis, Mercedes, the partnership and everything over winter, because we'll do our own little podcast just on that itself. But he is expected to make his debut in a Ferrari in a behind closed doors event in early 2025, when he probably will test some of the previous cars, which is good now because he can actually do a ground effect Ferrari anyway. I very much doubt that will be behind closed doors. it will be behind closed doors with a load of people hanging over the fence.
I was going to say there'll be the usual invite of the Tifosi pro media, who will be told under no certain circumstances they're not to take any video or take any photographs, who will take plenty of video and plenty of photographs, which will then get, unfortunately, leaked on social media the following day, but will only get leaked if Lewis beats the lap record in one of the old cars, because that's basically the way Ferrari works.
Yeah. We've got to add in one more thing to the Lewis Hamilton Mercedes talk. He's had one Bono alongside him all the way through, had to go through the pain of 2021 as well himself. He stood tall. He's always been on by Lewis's side. He's going to feel like he's almost lost part of his like his left arm or whatever, isn't he, going to Ferrari? I mean, he's learning Italian. He'll have a very good mechanic there to put alongside him. I think he already knows who it's going to be as well. So Bono, are we kind of sad, Paul, that Bono's not going with him?
Yeah, a bit, because I think it shouldn't be underestimated. What an engineer and a driver build up over time. You hear GP a lot when Max is on the radio, and the way that they speak to each other, you think, God, these guys hate each other. Like, this guy thinks he's an asshole. Like, that's awful. How would you speak to someone like that? And the reason that they do that is because they've got that kind of relationship that we don't see off camera or away from the team. And it's not quite as violent sounding, but it's a similar relationship that obviously Bono and Lewis have, and over a very long period of time. So yeah, I think I was actually mildly surprised. I when I heard the news that Lewis was moving, I thought, you know what? If he's got a non-compete contract, which they usually have these days, which says that if you join another team, you can't then poach other staff, and that's pretty standard across all of F1 now. It used to be a big thing. Schumacher was the reason that contract stuff started, because he took basically everyone from Benetton with him over to Ferrari. And since then, that's been a big thing about, no, you're not going to poach staff if you leave. And so even knowing that, I thought there's still a chance that Bono actually steps down and says to Toto, look, I want to go with Lewis. And Toto says, yeah, I get it. Okay, no problem. I won't stand in your way. So that's why I was quite surprised it didn't happen. But I also think it gives Lewis a chance to do something new, something different. But I think the first year,
my camera's like falling off the screen.
I think the first year he's going to find it very different. As Wajid said earlier, I think he's going to find it very difficult. So even if he's got a title-winning car, it's going to be really hard to win, because A, he's learning Italian, B, he's living in a different country potentially, although he might still stay in Monaco and commute. A few drivers have done that in the past. He's also learning about a brand new team in a factory that he's not used to. He's working with an engineer who doesn't really know his foibles and his traits, his likes, his dislikes. He's learning a car and a steering wheel, which, don't underestimate how hard it is to learn not just how to drive a different car, but learning their processes via their steering wheel. Steering wheel's got somewhere in the region of 94 different settings on it now. And you have to learn that. Part of his Fiorano test will be learning the steering wheel, rather than actually driving the cars that are 3 years old.
I think he will be very... I think he's already got the email with that all on.
Yeah, exactly. See, he's got a lot to learn and a lot to take in. And part of that process is also striking up that relationship with the new engineer. And I think it will be difficult. Yeah, so I'm surprised more than disappointed or upset for him. I'm surprised that Bono didn't want to go or couldn't.
Wajid?
I was going to add on the most obvious one. It's a brand spanking new engine, which
I was just thinking that.
Which people don't speak about either. And people don't realize how much of a difference an engine makes to a car in terms of, how you do with the braking, the accelerator, how it picks up, everything like that. So yeah, it's the first time it's not a Mercedes branded anything ever. Is it 19 years in his career?
Well, he's been with since 2007, all the way through F1, but obviously previously when he's tested, he's always tested a Mercedes as well. So in terms of, we're discussing the engine side of things. I think it's going to be a good thing for Ferrari, because Ferrari have always had the engine kind of just short of where Mercedes are, and Lewis is now going to bring all the secrets along for next season. And actually, we can move on to Ferrari now in terms of they threw everything at the kitchen sink to try and win that Constructors' Championship. We had to talk about whether they were doing the right strategy. Should they try something different? But they put themselves in the position that if Lando did terribly, had an incident with a back marker, engine blew up, who knows, whatever it may be, they had two cars there to try and get past a Lando Norris who had no backing from Oscar Piastri. And that's all they could do for this Constructors' Championship, isn't it, Wajid?
I think Ferrari should have pitted signs with about 8-9 laps to go and gone, have a go. What have you got to lose? What have you got to lose? All right, you pit stop might get botched slightly. He'd have overtaken the Mercedes because he was definitely quicker than George Russell.
Yeah.
Leclerc would have moved out of the way because, in fairness to Charles Leclerc, he was constantly on the radio going, "Where's Lando? Where are we positioned?" Like Charles wanted that constructors. The only thing Ferrari should have done, I think, is just thrown an extra pit stop and seen what happened. Would it have made a difference? Probably not, because like I said earlier, I think McLaren just had the pace all. I think McLaren just had the pace all weekend, and Carlos had cooked his tires early in the second stint because he'd gone so quick on them. He didn't bring him in properly like he's supposed to do with his Pirelli tires. He's supposed to bring him gently, etc., etc., etc. So that's the only other thing they could have done different. But Paul said it earlier. This constructor's title shouldn't have gone to the last race of the season anyway. It was a bonus. It was a bonus. I think Ferrari was just happy to be here. Everyone says about McLaren. Ferrari were definitely happy to be here, especially after sort of the way Qatar ended up folding with the drive-through and things like that. So, I don't know. The thing is, I don't know with Ferrari because they always, for the last couple of years, they finished fairly strong. You think, oh wow, it's something to build, and then they start really well, and then just something in the middle. So, I don't know what to say about Ferrari, or if it's something to build or what. I think they were just surprises everyone to sort of be at the dance. They did very, very well to get a second and third, especially Leclerc, like obviously driver of the day from 19th, especially after the 10 plays grid penalty and things like that. Yeah. But I think the only thing I'm going to criticize them on in Abu Dhabi is what was the harm at that point? You were finishing second anyway. Okay, cool. Carlos doesn't get a podium on his last. Maybe he doesn't get a podium on his last. You're finishing second anyway. What was the worst that was going to happen?
Yeah, I think they probably were slightly concerned, they lose out due to safety cars and stuff like that. And the strategy was pretty much perfect for a general race. But so I'm forgetting you're here now, Paul. Paul, in terms of Ferrari, this is where I think we're going to have something special next year from Ferrari, because every other team's going to throw their weight behind 2026. Everybody is. Are Ferrari going to just withdraw a little bit to keep it into 25? Try and get a second half of the season where the car is dominant, if it can be. And you're gaining, a driver's championship, possibly for an 8th time with Lewis Hamilton, or Charles Leclerc's first, which would be your first young driver for the academy to get a driver's championship, and you're going to get a constructors championship with Lewis Hamilton. And you go into 2026, you won't be that far behind, or you'll be able to regain it anyway. because Ferrari is such a strong side. Could we see Ferrari go, come on, 2025, let's just take advantage of everybody looking ahead and let's beeline for that championship?
The short answer is yes, but I think there are other teams that will also want to do that. I think there are other teams like McLaren who will think, okay, we came close this year. Let's throw everything at it next year. We don't know when our next opportunity to win a constructors and a drivers championship might come up, and 25 might be the last one for a while for them as well. Likewise, I think there is probably 3 other teams in there that are all thinking the same kind of thing. Alpine are probably thinking something similar. Let's go out with a bang with an engine. Ferrari are probably, you're right, probably are thinking, let's do a really good season next year. Let's not worry about 26 too much. That will take care of itself. Let's just focus on winning a title. I think the only one of the top 4 that probably isn't thinking like that is possibly Red Bull. Because they've had massive success for the last 4 years and they've won titles, they've won drivers' championships, and they're already focused on, what's coming beyond that with Ford, with Red Bull powertrains, with what's their driver lineup going to be. I think they're more focused on 26 than probably the others, along with Aston Martin. But outside of that, I think almost every other team will be thinking it's so close now. Look at Q1 in Abu Dhabi. 0.7 of a second between first and last. Yeah. 0.7 of a second. That's insane. For 20 cars, 10 constructors, 20 different drivers of all range of abilities, of varying different nationalities from around the world with different various experiences, age, and what have you. 0.7 of a second at the last race of the season. And I don't know that it would be any different next season. In actual fact, I think it might even be closer. So, yes and no. Ferrari will look at it and think, we've got a really good opportunity next year to carry on what we've done this year. But at the same time, there's a few other teams that will want to think the same, McLaren being one of them. And on top of that, I don't think there's any guarantee. There's not much room left. Like when you start a rules section, you've got like that much you can learn, right? So if you come in there, you've got all this to learn. At the end of a rules system, which we're at, it's kind of, that's the gap. There's not much more you can do that you aren't already doing or that anyone else hasn't already discovered. Is any one team going to suddenly find half a second out of nowhere with a new thing for next year? The answer is probably not. And if they found something, they're going to put it on the car in 26. They're not putting it on the car next year and risking regulation change. They're going to wait, right? When there's a bigger opportunity at the start of a rules section where the gap is much bigger between those that have and those that have not. So I think, yes, Ferrari will want to try and win the title next year, and they'll think they can with the 2 drivers they've got and the engine they've got and the chassis they'll have and what they've learned from this year. And all they really need to do to make their car more competitive isn't make it necessarily quicker, because everyone will make their car quicker. It's to open up the window of where it works, because that seems to be the issue with all 4 of the constructors at the top end, right? McLaren have made it work more often than not at the other end of the season. Red Bull have made it work at the start of the season. Ferrari have made it work every now and again, and Mercedes really every now and again when the temperature's right. And because all of them have got this kind of narrow, Mercedes is like that, it works there and nowhere else. Ferraris is like that, it works there but nowhere else. McLaren's is like that, and Red Bull's was like that at the start of the season. Other than that, they're all very similar in terms of pace. So really what Ferrari need to be focused on next year, I'm sure they already are, is making the car easier to set up and drive with a much bigger window. And if they can do that, they've got as good a chance as McLaren or Red Bull or Mercedes of winning the title.
Well, one thing Ferrari will learn from Sir Lewis Hamilton is not to put side pods on the car. I suppose that's one godsend for everybody else, that Mercedes haven't been dominant or really, really quick with a different kind of concept. And then he can go to Ferrari and go, hey, look at this. This is the information I know. That can't be possible. So Ferrari, great drive by, we almost forgot to mention it, but great first lap by Charles Leclerc. Was it P8 by sector 3? Okay, slightly helped by a certain dive bombing Dutchman, but
and Perez.
Yeah. And Sergio parking up.
And a couple of other drivers not making it round on that one. So, 5 that he didn't really need to overtake, but still, really good opening lap.
I can't really blame Sergio this time either, in fairness.
Well, to be honest, he shouldn't have been there. It's true. He should have been higher up the grid. But at least it wasn't Bottas. Anyway, in terms of Charles Leclerc, great opening lap. Almost, I think Paul will agree, an F4 iRacing lobby where you don't actually make any overtakes. You just weave around and avoid
He
things.
just survived until the outside overtake into 7, which was bonkers because that was 3 cars. Might well be at least the opening lap overtake of the season, I think.
I think
a couple of doubles throughout the season. George has done one. Max has done one. Sergio even did a double overtake at the start of the season. All of those were great, but this one I thought was particularly clever, just because you could see what he was thinking. They're all fighting above. Actually, if I take the outside line in here, I have the inside for the next apex, and that's where Sergio spun. So it kind of helped him, but he'd already passed 3 drivers and nearly a 4th.
Yeah, I actually thought it was 4 or 5 when I first watched it because obviously all the kerfuffle that was going on, but.
Yeah.
That shows, some people say, Charles Leclerc, he only wins races when he can drive from the front of a race. He's proven there that he can come through a field. It wasn't all, we've got a safety car to bring the field back together or anything. Yes, he only actually finished 5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton in the end. That different strategy by Lewis really did work. And you could see on Charles's face at the end of, he wanted that constructors, just like he wanted second in the championship last year. And you could almost say maybe Abu Dhabi isn't the greatest place for Lewis and Charles to try and win a title next season, but we will see. We will see. That's crazy prediction time. The other team that we obviously spoke about the Constructors' Championship a little bit earlier on, but 6th in the Constructors' Championship, Alpine saved themselves about £24 million by getting that double podium in Brazil. Gasly has carried on that form. Wajid, your view on Gasly's second half of the season? We've been very critical of Gasly before, especially his mindset. And then also what you thought of Doohan's opener as a sort of bedding in session, I think we can only call it.
I'm not going to spend any time talking about Doohan. I'll give him the same amount of time I give Guan Yu. Fuck off. We'll see what happens next year. What a waste of time. Cool, you stuck in the car. Brilliant. In terms of Gasly, fair play, because that Alpine was, up until that double podium, no one had Alpine finishing 6th. Yes, that one race changed everything, but you know what? You have to be there. That's what any sport, like being at the right place at the right time. Yes, luck is a factor, but like you said, he's carried on the form. He knew what his competition was in Abu Dhabi. He kept the cars that were quicker. He went, I'm not fighting you. He kept the car that he needed to keep behind him. And he did the job. And it's not vindicated the way Alpine have dumped Ocon, but he definitely goes into next year stronger. And you know what? Hopefully his mindset is right, in my opinion. I still think it's up and down, but he's still a decent driver. He's still a good enough driver. I hope Alpine don't bring a car that was a shit this season into next season, because if lightning was to strike twice and they're total crap and they get a double podium which takes them to 5th next year, then send me the lottery numbers at the same time. But no, fair play to Gasly, and I guess all I can say is well done Alpine to sort of salvage, to finish second in Formula 1.5.
Yeah, Paul, obviously the second half of the constructors' points, we had Aston Martin 94, Alpine 65, Haas 58, RB Visa Cash App, American Express debit card 46, Williams 17, even though they looked okay until they started crashing every 5 laps, and Sauber on 4.
You mean till they put Colapinto in the car?
Well, it was still being crashed under Logan, but that second half of a championship, do you think it kind of finished how it should have done at the end of this season, really?
Not really. I mean, Gasly scored 7 points in the first 20 races. and then scored 35 in the last 5. That's not really halfway, is it? I mean, that's insane. And even if you remove the 3rd place that he got in Brazil, he would still finish 8th right now in the last 5 races of points scored. The only people that beat him are the top 7 in the World Championship. They're the only people that scored more points than Gasly in the last 5 races. And he scored 35, which, again, put it in the context of a man that basically took a seat that he used to have at Red Bull, means that he's amongst a lot of drivers, actually, who scored a lot more points than Perez, including Zhou Guanyu in the last 7 races, more than Perez. So I don't think it's halfway. I think it's literally probably Mexico onwards where he finished 10th in the points. And that was the start of Alpine, like, okay, we've found what makes our car work. We found that what we talked about, that narrow window of setup. We know where it works and where it's good now. Now we need to maximize that. Got a bit lucky, obviously. Got very lucky with Brazil.
Yeah.
But actually, the 5th place in Qatar and the 7th place in Abu Dhabi were on pace. There's nothing to do with like special weather conditions or he got gifted it. They were on the pace that he had in that car and in the driver. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the last 2 races of that Alpine. I think they just suddenly found what they were missing, because they certainly didn't develop that car through the season either. And yeah, does it finish where I thought it would finish? It probably did. If you'd said to me at the start of the season, outside the top 4, where do people finish? You'd probably have gone, well, if Aston Martin aren't going to mix it with the top 4, then they're probably going to finish 5th. Alpine are probably 5th or 6th as well. So it's probably between Alpine and Aston Martin. And then just kind of pick whoever from the rest, isn't it? The fact that they only just finished above Haas says a lot about what Haas did, particularly with Nico Hülkenberg, and less about what Alpine didn't do, actually. And certainly in the last 5 races, they came good. But yeah, it didn't surprise me where they finished if you looked at it at the start of the season. It did surprise me if you looked at it halfway through the season. I thought Williams were going to finish ahead of Alpine, and Alpine would finish 9th. I genuinely did, because they looked all over the place. But credit where credit's due. They've kicked a lot of people out. They brought a lot of new people in, some really good people as well, albeit from Formula 2 and Formula 3 and Junior Series. They've changed the regime. They've changed the blame culture that they had within that team, which was very much centered around, it's not my fault, it's someone else's fault. And they've changed all of that, again, through good management. They've hired some really good people. And then they've kind of gotten rid of the bad apple in the team. And you could say that about Ocon, because he has caused rifts in that team. It's not really representative of who I think he is as a driver. I still think he's a very good driver, but I think he was very toxic for that environment. And so they've gotten rid of that, and they've got someone in that they really like, which is Jack Doohan. Now, he might not set the world alight in terms of pace, and he certainly didn't show that in Abu Dhabi. It's kind of a whatever, throw it away kind of race. But they've got a much more harmonious kind of group of people working there now. And that can only be a good thing in terms of just making sure they're doing all the basics right. And if they do that, they've got the infrastructure and the size and everything else. They've got everything they need to be a top 5 team next year, if they can start well. So in the end, I think it ends up the way we thought it would end up, but not the journey we took to get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Alpine have managed to finish 6th. Just having a look. Also, we can mention we can move on to the next one, which is obviously yet not another one. The FIA, Rui Marquez is decided we're going to go on to, you want harsh penalties, we'll give you them. If you breathe on the outside of a bodywork, we're going to give you a stop-go penalty. If you do something that a current and former world champion, 4-time world champion, did last season, you're going to get a penalty for it. I was going to move on to, obviously, Nico Hülkenberg and his performance this weekend, which I think was exceptional in terms of his speed, and actually still bringing home 8th place, was it, in the final race? 7th or 8th? 8th, yes.
Gasly finished 7th, he finished 8th.
Yeah.
8th in it. But picked up a 3-place grid penalty, so it could have been an even better starting position, starting 4th, for an overtake in the pit lane. Now, what do we think about this, guys? Because obviously Max went driving around everybody last season in exactly the same pit lane, and there wasn't even an investigation about it. Hulkenberg does it at a much slower speed and gets a free place penalty. Is this about consistency, or is this what people have been asking for?
I mean, it was okay in Qatar. It was okay in Qatar as well with Alonso, right? Because the pit lane's wider. So, you know, yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing always, isn't it? We just ask for consistency. If you're going to apply the rules on a consistent basis. Don't change from week to week. And I'm not even going to use like the stewards are changing weekly because they seem to rotate around the same 3, 4, 5 stewards this year anyway, unless obviously unless I'm proven wrong. So whatever. Obviously it's different. Honestly, it's got to the point. I'm gonna save sort of what I want to say in regards to the FIA and even Mohammed bin Salman.
Mohammed bin Sakam.
Yeah, and how he has still no one has stood up for him against election. So we've probably got another 4 years of him. But I'll save all that for later. But it's just the same conversation we always have. Just common sense and consistency.
Paul?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add, honestly. I'm quite happy to argue with Wajid about a lot of things, but I think on this subject we're pretty much aligned. It's just I'm frustrated, but also I will say this: there's a touch of realism for me about this one, and it's that I guess we have to give Rui a break because what he's done, he's come in and he's obviously got his own way of doing things, and his last 2 races have definitely shown that he's much more like Charlie Whiting, much more direct, much more it's my way or the highway, shut the fuck up, get on with it kind of thing. He's not come out and done lots of press. He's not come out and done lots of interviews. He's not sitting there on Sky Sports like Michael Massey was. He's literally in the background. And if you watched him go down the street, you probably wouldn't even recognize who he was. And that is who I think a race director should be. They should be focused on that. And also they should be brutal about it. They should be applying the sporting regulations exactly how they're written down. And to be fair, he has. And that's what we've been asking for a long time. The problem we've got, of course, is we're now comparing it and contrasting it with things that happened in the last race or things that happened last year or things that happened in the last couple of years. And maybe we can't do that now. Maybe we can't do both. Maybe we want consistency and harsh penalties by the letter of the rules. Well, if we want that and he's delivering that, then that's a good thing, surely. So maybe we have to suspend our kind of... the consistency side of it, if you like, because actually over time he will show us that he can be consistent if he keeps the job, of course, because we still don't know whether he'll actually keep the job for next year.
That's very true. We had a few penalties thrown out. It felt like at one point that meme was coming out with flicking penalties left, right, and centre. We'll just very quickly go through them because I think pretty much for once, actually, they're all pretty clear on what's going on. I'll save the main controversial one for later on.
Okay.
So we'll start with Bottas first, causing a collision. And that was with, let me just find the exact thing. It was with Magnussen. Well, this was with car 11. Okay, that's not the Magnussen one. But was the Magnussen one.
Because they're gonna talk about the early collision with Sergio, aren't they?
Sergio.
Yeah, so you've got the collision with Sergio
on that one.
2 penalty points and a 10-second time penalty, which ironically Valtteri Bottas now has to serve when he next races
when he
in
never
Formula
drives
One.
in F1 again.
A little bit like Schwartzman, who has never had an F1
never even
career.
driven a Grand Prix and still has a penalty for one.
It is only 2 points for Valtteri, but it would be so funny if that 2 points took him over his 12-month period. No, sorry, you've got to miss a Grand Prix. Well, how do I enter one and miss one? But do we all agree with kind of the opening lap of, if we want consistency, 10-second penalty, throw it out and get on with it?
Yes and no. I was quite a fan, and this is one of the few things I was a fan of Neil's Village. I was quite a fan of Neil's Village approach of lap 1 being a bit more lenient. just because it is the cut and thrust of lap one. Mistakes will happen. I don't ever think there's like these drivers are the best drivers in the world, and I don't think they have the ability to say, I'm going to do this intentionally on that one. Like, no one wants their race ruined on that one, any of them, no matter where they've qualified 20th or 1st. And I like Neil's approach in terms of just trying to be a bit more lenient lap one and a bit more, let's let them race. And so this, for me, again, is it consistent? Sure. Is it applying the right sporting regulations? Yep. And that's what we want. I just worry that it might just be a bit too harsh, lap one.
Wajid? Best drivers in the world made a mistake. Is what it is. Unfortunately, that's how I see it. I've always understood the leniency of lap one, but I think in recent times it's got to the point where you've had to effectively crash into an iceberg to get some sort of penalty. So yeah, maybe it's a bit harsh and we're going backwards, but maybe it's harshness in the long run that will end up at some level of medium after not after being completely stupid after being at the opposite end for many moons.
Yeah, obviously, like Paul mentioned, Valtteri Bottas did pick up a second penalty for a collision with Kevin Magnussen. That's where he goes drop of 5 grid places for the next race he participates in and picks up another 3 penalty points. So he's on 5 for a 12-month period where he's not even racing. But it is, as you just heard there, and I'm going to get his name right. Hang on. That is a 10-second stop-go penalty for Edward Smith, the captain of the Titanic, as he hit an iceberg. Thank you. I had to get that one in. Just to throw out there as well, there's a full start.
You get a 4X for that as well.
You got a 4X as well, yeah. It actually,
and a 1X for an off track, or
I'm not sure if he hit it a couple of times on the way down as well on rejoin, but there's a full start for Guan Yu Zhou.
Unsafe rejoin if it did come back up.
I mean, who even noticed the unsafe rejoin for Guan Yu Zhou at any point? No. I mean, we've only just remembered he's driving this season. Apparently, rolled at the start. So Piastri hitting Colapinto. He picks up a 10-second penalty.
I do have a bit of an issue with that one, though.
I mean, I can't remember seeing it, to be fair.
It's the one where he's trying to come back after the spin. So it's like lap 3 or 4, maybe even earlier than that. And he's going down the main straight. He's got a run on him. But then Colapinto kind of parks in the middle of the track. Oscar kind of goes to the side of him, but not all the way to the side. And I think what Oscar was expecting was Colapinto will now either go to the outside of the corner, where the line is, or he'll move to the inside to cover. And so Oscar stayed there. And then what happened was they entered the braking period, the braking area, which Oscar wasn't ready for because he doesn't brake that early. Colapinto braked and he went straight into the back of him. And by then he was level with his tyre right in the middle. And if you remember, he gave Colapinto a puncture. And he got the same penalty that Max got for spinning Piastri out at the start. I'm not sure that's the same thing.
It was the lap after the virtual safety car.
So it was the lap up. I don't think that's the same offence to get the same penalty. I'm not convinced with that at all. I think that's Colapinto braking earlier than Oscar Piastri thought he would, which, it's on Oscar because he went into the back of it. But I think that's a genuine kind of like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to brake there. Like, I didn't. Why is he trying to give him a puncture? He's not. So, that was a bit of a weird one for me.
I partially agree, but historically, they've always handed out penalties given on how it rather than the severity of the incident, instead of the actual incident itself. What happens to both cars retrospectively after the incident. So, whilst I agree, it was harsh. Unfortunately, this is just how it is because he got a puncture, even though Oscar's race is ruined. Yeah.
But as we've said before, that's not how the stewards have applied the rules.
No. I know.
The stewards they always make a point of saying we don't take into account the result of whatever.
You can say that.
And all of us know this fully. And all of us
Absolutely,
know
because we look at the Alonso thing with
Yeah.
Russell, right?
Yeah, all of us know they're full of shit.
Because we all know that would never have been an issue had Russell not crashed and ended up on his head.
Yeah.
That's where that one started, because they did punish as a result of the cause and effect, right? They always say, no, we punish on the cause, we don't punish on the effect. Well, okay, then if you don't punish on the effect, it makes no difference whether Colapinto got a puncture or not. But we all know that's they looked at that and went, that's not fair. He's made that guy have a puncture. So they did punish on effect.
Oh, so it's not down to xenophobia. I thought it was xenophobia.
It's not down to passport. Don't worry.
I thought it was down to xenophobia of Spanish people.
We can also throw out
anyone that's not British.
Liam Lawson, car unsafe condition release. I think that was a bit of a slam dunk. But what I liked is Liam is still going down the straight at 167 miles an hour with a tyre that's not connected properly.
Yeah, but he didn't. That's not why he got told off. He got told off because he got out of the car, forgot to refit the steering wheel, and forgot to turn the fucking car off. So he left the car on without a steering wheel on.
Oh yeah,
and he didn't make it safe for the marshal. So there's three things you have to do.
No. He got if you remember,
he got the stop go penalty for the
got the stop go penalty.
Oh, you got the stop go penalty for that. Yeah, sorry. I thought you were talking about the end of the race. Yeah.
No.
We forgot about that.
Yeah. Who cares about that? Honestly, who cares about that? It was a stop go.
But you've got three things you need to do when you get out of the car, right? And he did two, and he failed to do two of them.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's really not been a good return for Liam Lawson.
No,
I don't care what anyone says.
But Yuki was in the Red Bull today, by the way.
Did you? I thought that was very strange. Very strange.
Wasn't scheduled.
It actually was.
No, as far as yesterday.
Okay.
Sorry. On Saturday, Sky interviewed Horner and put him again under pressure about what was the Sergio Perez situation. Was he going to be fired? Was he going to be let go? They asked Sergio as well, and at that point he said, "Are you planning to change anyone that's going in the car for the test?" And he said, "Nope, we've got all of it's exactly how it was." And Yuki was not on the list to be testing for Red Bull. That's a change made either Saturday or Sunday.
I find it a situation that they obviously wanted to try Yuki, but I think it's very much been just here you go, have a go.
Are they paying him lip service, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just, here you go, you've had your test, now shut up and get back in the RB. Because you're a Honda driver, you're not a Red Bull driver. Obviously Liam had that.
Lawson's not good enough for that seat, and we'll find
I don't think he is either.
No, and I've been saying that all season as well, right? I've been saying that I don't think either of them are what Red Bull think they need for a second driver.
I think if you put Yuki or Liam in that car, you're gonna cause problems. Because at some point, even if it's after Max has pitted, and you've got to let him through for a team or whatever, and there might be a safety car or something which brings them back into play. We saw it with Albon every now and again, but Albon's kind of jumped out of the way. So with Perez, he always jumped out of the way. I don't think you'll ever see Liam and Yuki just jump out of the way. And I think it's going to cause a few issues. Not hugely, because I don't think they're going to be competing for Grand Prix victories if that Red Bull is even quick enough to do so. So it's going to be an interesting one to see what happens. There's another penalty, which a lot of people didn't realise, for Lance Stroll, for leaving the track without a justifiable reason multiple times. Now, that's a long way of saying he ran wide quite a bit. The stewards reviewed video evidence and found that car 18 left the track on 4 occasions without justifiable reason, having received a black and white flag on the 3rd occasion. That obviously brings through a 5.
I'm sorry. I'm still trying to find a justifiable reason he's on the grid.
He's in F1, yeah. But this is the thing. Like normally, it's track limits. You got a 5-second penalty. You've had your track limits warning.
Right. So I would imagine that's been applied to a part of the track that wasn't part of the race director's notes, because that's the only other time they do that.
But at
So in
what
other words,
point
if it
do
wasn't
you-
part of the race director's notes that he said you must not go off at this part of the track because otherwise we'll call track limits on it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not a track limits violation because they didn't call it, but they've obviously given him a black and white flag and said, look, stop fucking around. Stop going wide at that corner. We don't want you going over that. Even though it wasn't in the race director's notes,
But-
we're now telling you, don't go over it. And he did it 4 more times.
I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about Abu Dhabi. Turn 1, we know that was really picked up on.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be a gaining an advantage, David. So that's what you're looking for. It's
Well,
not going to be one of those.
This is what I'm thinking. What corner in any present mind at Abu Dhabi are you going to leave the track, whether you're gaining an advantage or not, 4 times in the race without justifiable reason, unless you're just trying to find the exit to the circuit?
It's got to be the hairpin. That's the only place I can.
Well, I mean, I haven't
think.
seen the video footage and I haven't seen anyone post it yet. I thought it was one of the later turns where you can cut the inside and you can put all 4 wheels over, but it's quite a harsh curb, so probably it would damage the car or be slower. That's the only other one I could.
But then if you're going to do that and it's slower, why penalise it?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. But I think because he was, you know, where the bollard was that Lewis ended up with underneath. I think it's that corner. I think he was going through there, trying to gain an advantage by cutting it.
Maybe
but
he was
actually,
just
it ended
trying
up
to hit
going
the
slower.
I'm more aggrieved by what you just said of someone not posted the Lance Stroll video. Like,
Is it a video of Lance Stroll in an F1 car? It's not in Turkey.
Who the hell?
Rocket Powered Mohawk is actually holding it back for another time.
Yeah, who the hell is watching videos of Lance Stroll to see why he got penalties? Come on. I'm more aggrieved at that.
I just don't get it, but it's a strange one. I don't think I've ever seen it documented. If anybody wants to know and wants to be boring and read it, document 52 at Abu Dhabi. So there's Paul's evening read. He's going to note that down.
It's exactly
final one. Obviously, the first thing that actually happened in the race as well, Max Verstappen's move on Oscar Piastri. We've said about how lap 1 is lenient. Do we think they're right here? I mean, my personal view, absolutely. I mean, yeah, okay, he was alongside, but he wasn't concerned with Oscar Piastri was going to turn into the corner where Oscar Piastri was going to end up. He was going to end up in the Abu Dhabi Sea at one point if he hadn't given him enough space. It's one of them head loss moments, isn't it, Wajid, that we've seen before?
It's not a head loss moment. Max has never been punished. This is what it comes down to. If you have allowed a driver to drive a certain way for the majority of his career, where a lot of us have said his racecraft, his wheel-to-wheel racecraft, is really not that good when it's times of pressure, but you've allowed this nonsense to occur, not just with Lewis, but with every driver that's gone wheel to wheel with him. This is what happened. Now, his comments were just totally out of order, calling people idiots and stuff like that. Max, the only person you got to blame is yourself. Because also the other thing is, he cut a fair amount of the corner into turn 1 anyway, for the dive bomb anyway. So
maybe that's what Lance was doing.
Yeah, maybe. But you'd hope not. But no, like, it's just, I don't know. Like, I'm sure Paul can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never seen a 4-time world champion so petulant about everything ever, or in my sort of recollection of watching the sport. I know Seb had petulant. No, Seb had petulant moments, not to this, where not a victim complex. Seb
I will say,
victim complex.
The FIA have decided not to investigate this stupid idiot's comment, which is a bit weird because other people have had comments like that thrown at them before and investigated and stuff like that. But Paul, do you think it would have been petulant of Rui Marquez to go, yeah, okay, you want 20, here's another 10?
Yes, I think it would. As much as I'd have liked to have seen it do it,
I think we would have all loved
been
it.
petulant. Yes, I'm surprised that they aren't going to investigate the comments because they've punished drivers in similar way. Magnussen made similar comments earlier in the season, and was punished with driver points and with a fine for bringing the sport into disrepute. So I'm surprised they're not going to investigate that, but I guess they leave that as heat at the moment kind of stuff straight after he got the penalty, whatever. The penalty itself.
Sorry, and also Max is now on 7 penalty points. I don't think they want to put him on 8 or 9.
He needs paternity leave.
I also don't think they want to put him on 8 or 9 going into and having to suspend a potential world championship.
I don't know. Again, driver. I don't think it matters to Rui Marquez. I think if he's the race director next season, I don't think he'll care. No, I think the original. It's funny actually because I rewatched the attempted assassination into turn 1. I watched it over and over again because I was sort of initially I was like, oh bloody idiot, this is typical Max. Usual, throw it down the inside. Oh, I was first at the apex, therefore I deserve room. I was convinced that's what it was all about. And then actually I watched it again, and I actually think this one is a mistake. I think this is a genuine, actual Verstappen mistake out in the wild. We don't see these very often, but I think this is one of them. When you rewatch it, the position of the cars changes as they go towards the apex. And what happens is that Piastri goes wide, turns in for his normal line, and only as he turns in does Max then think, oh, I can get to the inside. I've now got the space. It's a very last-minute kind of attempt. Piastri sees him late, gives him just enough room, which he's entitled to do, which is fine. Piastri did nothing wrong. But Max is now on the inside on cold tyres on probably the most slipperiest corner on the whole of the track, turn 1. We've seen loads of guys run wide. We saw laps deleted in qualify. It's a really hard part of the circuit to go round, even if you have the outside lane coming into the apex. Max is now on a very tight line going round the apex, and albeit has the apex. Oscar then accelerates away because he can on the outside line. Max goes to accelerate and loses it. And I think that's a genuine mistake. I don't think this was one of those I'm Max Verstappen, get out the fucking way kind of overtakes that we've seen in the past. I genuinely think this was a proper oh, fuck. I didn't realise I couldn't put the power on that early. And it's ended up in a collision, which is totally his fault. I think he gets away with it by the rotation of the car and accelerating through the spin, which allows him to point forward and carry on. So it doesn't look like he's been penalised quite so much. He still got hurt by it, still burnt his tyres up, still couldn't compete in the first half of the race and got a 10 seconds. So I think overall, right decision. And I think he, in the car, probably looked at it differently and thought that it wasn't really his fault, but it was. It was absolutely his, but it was a mistake. I think this one was a mistake.
I know he burnt his tires, but it was a great save into the spin.
It was a good save, especially with 18 others, 17 others coming around the corner. But I kind of sat there when they said, oh, why didn't they give me 20 seconds? I just wanted them to go, okay, 10-second penalty, Max Verstappen. You've called it. It's 20 seconds if anybody does that in the future.
I mean, go back to your other points about have we seen another petulant. The only thing I can really compare, he's kind of, it does feel like he's got a chip on his shoulder permanently, right? And he shouldn't have now. Like, you win a world championship and that chip should disappear. You win 2, you absolutely have nothing to worry about or think about. You win 3, you're untouchable. Win 4, and you're still thinking that you're the victim. You still feel like you're being picked on. You still feel like you've got a chip on the shoulder. That's insane.
So do you know what? I think the problem is that as the three of us, as we sat here, as we said, probably fairly sort of hardcore F1 fans, we appreciate the talent that is Max Verstappen. These drivers don't get off like social media and Twitter and the drive to survive people. I guarantee Max Verstappen is listening to them too much about the 2021 asterisks, the illegal car asterisks, and the Foodgate asterisks. And I guarantee, and it's as stupid as it sounds, because obviously he's a man who streams and stuff. He's part of this whole social media thing. I guarantee those thoughts are eating him. I guarantee he does not feel he gets the respect he deserves because people too busy commenting on his world titles. As stupid as that sounds.
I would add into that as well. I mean, Paul will know from my racing, and Wajid will have seen the clips. Let's go back to Jimmy's race, where he has obviously a load of red line drivers who obviously they go and have a laugh on stream and whatever, and Atravision, a good streamer himself, a very good presenter, very good commentator, goes out there and almost embeds himself into the red line thing, and then they do the meme livery, which some people found funny. Some people went, hang on a minute, you're doing a mental health race and you're making fun of your title rival on your car, and things like that, and you get embedded into that thing. But from what I've seen of the clips of Max, even when they joke about stuff, he gets quite sort of defensive about it. I remember when they played the Dutch national anthem, and he's like, "Oh, for God's sake, I'm sick of it." Last season, and like you say, he lives in that. We already know he's been on iRacing tonight, testing up the new stuff on iRacing, and it's like, yeah, you live in that world, but to dedicate your life to Formula One to be a world champion used to be. This is, you think of the Mansell times. You throw everything about your life away. You remortgage a house, you throw yourself into it. And I think the way Max sort of does it, but then just goes, oh, well, I'll go jump on iRacing tonight and I'll race till 3 o'clock in the morning, then I'll go do the Grand Prix and then I'll dominate that. And it almost, for me, devalues. It's good in terms of an F1 champion getting himself out there, but that it looks like a lot less dedication. I'm not saying he does do less dedication, but it looks from the outside line a bit more easier, a bit less dedicated in terms of, okay, I'm Formula One world champion. I need to show everybody I'm Formula One world champion. I can represent the sport correctly. I mean, we know Lewis has gone out there and done loads of different things. He's obviously into his fashion, his music and things. Vettel goes out there as a world champion now. I can't remember in his career whether he was somebody who did that and represented correctly. Alonso, not so much. Schumacher did when he had to. Do we think Max Verstappen as a 4-time world champion is an F1 world champion that people can look at and go, yeah, I want to be like Max?
I don't think he cares.
It's difficult. It's difficult for me to answer that as a 53-year-old, slightly overweight.
Well, you got a chance.
I'm not. I'm not that demographic. I don't know.
There's 20 years between me and you. Jeez.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't inspire me personally. He doesn't make me think I want to be like Max Verstappen or I want to win world titles, in the way that Ayrton Senna did. But then think about it, right? Ayrton Senna was the guy that made me think that I could drive a Formula One car. He was the guy I looked up to and admired and aspired to be. But actually, as a role model, was he a good role model? I don't know. When you look at the way he Senna raced people and took people on and took people off the track and the way that he spoke to some of the people in F1, maybe he wasn't the best role model overall. Although plenty of the stuff that he did as a world champion, the charity work that he did in Brazil in particular, with the homeless people in Sao Paulo, with young children, with lots of that stuff was amazing. So there are contrasts, but that's not to say that Max doesn't do that stuff either. Max does do some of that stuff. He just doesn't really shout about it that much. I think you're onto something. I don't necessarily agree with David in terms of what you said in terms of is he doing it the right way?
Yeah.
But I think in the sense that because he's more normal, as in like he's one of us, he's an iRacer, he streams on Twitch, he joins in with the red line memes, because he's like one of us, that's freaked us out, because actually I think we, as older people, maybe think that the world champion should be not ethereal, but should be almost iconic and should be untouchable and should be mythical in some way, like Hamilton has. I mean, I've never seen Hamilton do a simulator race. I've never seen him in iRacing. I've never seen him do anything like that. He wouldn't even do the virtual Grand Prix in 2020. And so therefore there's a mythical part about him. How is he so quick? And how is he so much better than all these youngsters? And how has he stayed at the top for so long? And all that's part of the myth of Lewis Hamilton, right? It's all part of the mystique about him. And maybe that adds more sheen, for want of a better phrase, to the fact that he's a world champion and someone we could admire and look at. And you know, and then you add all the other things that he does that make him obviously look like that outside of F1. And that starts to add that together. Because we don't really hear about Max doing charity things, even though I know he does and doesn't shout about them very much, even though I know he does work for charities and doesn't really speak about it publicly. And because he's kind of like a bit similar to us, maybe he's too close to us and we can't see that aura and that sheen and that kind of mystique about him. Maybe because he's so blunt and straightforward, he just says how he thinks, whether that's good or bad, right? We know what he thinks because he tells us. Yeah. And maybe that's not what we want somehow subconsciously from a world champion.
And I do also want to just quickly on to sort of further that point.
Yeah.
When you're following Lewis Hamilton as the world champion, the thing with Lewis is, in terms of like what he's done outside of the sport, it's its own bubble because it's the first time a man of color broke into the sport. He's done all the diversity stuff like that. That stuff wasn't pushed, so he's made that more. Lewis has sort of been the pioneer in terms of colored people, like Black, Asian, thinking there's a route for me in F1. So Lewis is in his own bubble, and for some people, Lewis is considered bigger than F1, rightly or wrongly, because of what he's done in his own bubble with the fashion, the music, the diversity, etc., etc., etc. And because, like Paul has said, Max is just, if you give Max an Xbox, you give him FIFA, you give him a rig, and you give him sim racing, I guarantee that man is happy all weekend. And some football. And because it's such a contrast to what we've had in terms of Lewis, in terms of outgoing personality, the fashion and stuff, the openly talking about diversity and charity, it's not a medium. You've literally gone from one extreme to this large and life character to essentially Joe Blogs, and I also think that doesn't unfortunately doesn't help Max, rightly or wrongly, of course, rightly or wrongly, but it's just sort of to further add to sort of Paul's point, really.
Let me just add 2 points as well to that. I mean, Paul says, Max goes into charity work and may not shout about it. But you're a Formula One world champion. And the whole thing with charity work is you're trying to further the promotion of that charity. So surely you should shout about it because you're Formula One world champion. If you were back, like, let's say we did a,
I'm not saying he's good at doing it. I'm saying that he's shit at telling people he's doing it.
You're telling me he's not good at something? Hang on a minute. Yeah. Don't tell Jos. He'll be left at a petrol station on the way home. But also in terms of Max, like, I do think he's very much, like he won the title. He's happy to, but I think if he gets to a stage where he's not winning races and he takes, maybe does what Lewis has had to do over the last couple of years, I do think he'd probably just walk away rather than try and fight it himself. Let's see how he copes with, say, next season, where obviously we know all the cars should be starting pretty close in terms of the championship. Finally, so let's see what happens with Max. He's what, 4-time now. Let's see if we're talking about 5. We've got predictions coming up for next season, and we'll do the season review about it all. We'll move on to predictions for Abu Dhabi, and if we got time, we'll look at Sergio Perez. But we'll probably keep that for the review show.
Let's do Checo's now really quickly. Thanks for playing. You got given a world title car. You've never been the same.
I knew this was coming.
You've got comprehensively beaten. You're a hero in Mexico. Thanks very much. Thanks for playing. Sayonara.
Well, he was told it was going to be down to him after Abu Dhabi.
Sayonara.
It doesn't seem like it's going to be down to him.
I don't know if you saw it, but there was a really key interview that took place over the weekend.
Yes.
And in it, he said he was asked about his future again, and in it he said, as far as he's concerned, quote, "I will be in the car next season unless they find a way of paying the money." That's the strangest answer to that question I've seen him reply with, which suggests that actually the issue isn't that he won't be in the car, it's that they need to pay him compensation if they don't want him in the car, is basically what he's saying.
I heard something around 12 million, I think it was.
And I've heard 20 mil.
Yeah.
I've heard 20
which
mil.
is amazing because that 20 mil is exactly the same amount it was going to cost to get Colapinto out of his contract.
Yeah, but
that's
also
an interesting one.
But they lose 40 million of funding, so it's not 20 million, it's 60 million.
Yeah. I will still be very surprised if he is in the car next season.
I will be very surprised if he's not in the car at the start of next season.
Same.
Well, we'll take a break on that discussion and have a Kit Kat, and
there's a set of predictions straight away,
and we'll look at that properly in the season review, which will probably be just on about which drivers were sacked and Sergio Perez. We'll move on to predictions. Wajid, you've always got the predictions lined up, so let's have a look at what happened there.
Oops. I'll just read them out. So. Do you have qualifying in front of you?
I have them right in front of me.
So, I'll start with myself first. So I had Norris in fifth.
No.
I had Sainz in fourth.
No.
Wait, after the penalty, didn't he not end up in fourth?
No,
because Sainz didn't have.
He was third anyway.
Oh, he was third anyway, of course.
Yeah.
I had Verstappen in third.
No.
And then I had Piastri second, and I had Charles Leclerc first.
Yeah, so Hulkenberg was P4, but dropped to P7, which would have put Max fourth and Gasly fifth.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. David, you had Sainz in fifth.
No.
You had Russell in fourth.
No.
You had Leclerc third.
No.
You had Norris second.
No.
And you had Verstappen first.
Oh, well. First time I backed Verstappen, and look what happens.
Wait for it.
Paul, my friend, you had Piastri in fifth.
Yep.
You had Leclerc fourth.
Yep.
You had George Russell third.
Yep.
You had Verstappen second.
Yeah.
But you did get one for Norris.
Thank you.
So hang on, what are we on? Paul
2 for 15. We've gone 2 for 15.
Wajid on 1.
2 for 15. It's the worst we've done in the last 3 Grand Prix. We're actually worse technically right now than Sergio Perez.
Since we last looked, because we got to about halfway through the season, and I'd done okay, and then we started actually checking the scores, and I haven't scored since almost.
Right.
Yeah. I'll go reverse order. So Paul, I want to save your fifth to last. So you had Verstappen first.
Yeah.
You had Leclerc second.
Yeah.
You had Norris third.
Yeah.
You had Russell fourth.
Yeah.
And you had Checo Perez in fifth.
I did. Can I just say in my defense that all of my drivers other than Perez are one place out of where they actually finished?
Yeah, the problem is we don't score like that. So
but also if we're adding up those positions, Perez is 15 places out of where we should be.
Yeah. Move on. Let's listen to David's expert predictions.
It's all average now. Mr. Magpie's done all right. So you had Norris in first.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
You had...
No, I didn't.
Sorry, no, you didn't. You had Leclerc in first. Never mind.
Yeah.
You had Norris second.
Yeah, but let's say Leclerc.
You had Norris. You had Norris. You had Norris second. You had Verstappen third. You did get one for Hamilton.
Woo!
And you had Piastri in fifth.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 1-1, David. Well done.
Yeah.
So myself, I had Russell in fifth.
Yes, you
Wow.
get one.
I had Norris in 4th.
No,
I had Verstappen 3rd.
you had Sainz 2nd.
I had Sainz 2nd, and I had Leclerc 1st because I
Nice.
had Ferrari winning it.
Yeah,
but I
you
also
went
said
for them winning the
So,
title,
yeah.
didn't you?
Wajid got
you got
3
points. 3 to 1-1. So the winner of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix this week.
It's not Brad Pitt. It is. We've got to
Not Jack
mention
Stewart.
it. Did anyone see it?
I did.
This extra
It's so
podium
stupid.
they did. Poor
did.
George Russell. You finished
Yeah, I did.
5th. Come up
Who
with
was it? Was
special
it was
champagne.
it George Russell and Charles Leclerc with it?
Charles Leclerc? Yeah, and it's
So
just like,
stupid.
yeah, okay. So,
Don't forget, we also had the special Guan Yu Zhou podium ceremony for Lewis Hamilton as well on the
true,
grid.
very true.
That's forever what it's going to be called from now. And if we ever get a special addition to the grid finishing, who didn't finish in the top 3, it's going to be called the Guan Yu Zhou.
The stupid thing is, I kind of sort of understand Lewis to a really, really
No.
small extent. To a
No.
really small extent.
No, he's not retiring. He's not dead. He's literally moving teams.
I
Where was
guarantee-
my fucking parade for Nico Hulkenberg, who sadly, after 2 amazing seasons at Haas, is moving to another. Where was his donuts?
Well, to be fair, he's going to Sauber, which he did after he was at Force India for about
Okay,
the 5th
where-
time.
Where was Ocon's? Well, okay, Ocon didn't enter, but that's not really a thing, is it? So yeah, but whatever. Where was Sainz? Sainz is leaving Ferrari after 4 years and very successful, going to Williams. He needed a podium. He's never going to see another one.
I can actually throw out my thing of the weekend. Yes, we're not the Missed Apex podcast. We're not. We're first, but we're not right, or whatever they say. I'm not going to get copyrighted by them, but we are last and still not right. I will
Hey.
say my.
Everyone
Go on.
needs a team for the dream to work, right?
Yeah, I will say I thought it was brilliant. We didn't mention it. We're not going to talk about it now because it's going to go on for too long. But Max and George turning up at the dinner. George Russell turns up last.
So
There's a
good.
seat next to Max. Max says,
We
"Hi,
saved
George.
you a seat, George.
I've saved you a seat." George picks up the seat and walks down the other end of the table. I mean, fair play. He wanted to sit next to his teammate Lewis Hamilton
Yeah,
for
he
his
sat
last
next to
time,
Lewis. He sat next
which
to
is
Lewis, yeah.
absolutely fine.
I do.
That is exactly the reason he wanted to move.
I think it's a nice tradition the drivers have now in Abu Dhabi. They all get together and
How much did they pay for the bill this year? Did anyone see the bill?
He's
Did they beat last year,
Fourth-
1,600 quid?
I think it was like 1,400, and I think it was
Oh,
Valtteri who
yeah.
picked it up.
How was it
I'm not-
Valtteri who got this year?
I'm not 100% sure, but Valtteri definitely picked up the bill, which is obviously part of his Mercedes contract still, probably. He has to pick up everything just behind
Yeah,
Lewis
quite.
Hamilton. Lewis
Yeah.
Hamilton organises it. Valtteri pays for it. But yeah, it's a nice thing they do. But one thing I don't get, I mean, he was there all season, but why was Esteban Ocon there and not Jack Doohan, Ollie Behrman? Come on, invite the whole crew.
Lewis probably didn't have the numbers.
Well, Lewis
Yeah.
has, because every time Ollie's raced, he's been next to him. They've
And
had
in
enough
fairness,
time to
the-
swap numbers.
And in fairness, the Jack Doohan one, right? Piss off. Piss off.
Well, I don't know. You could have had Mick doing there as well, but that
Can't
is
remember
our
seeing it.
We should have Alex Crivelli there at the same time and just got the gang back together.
wow, Alex Crevette. Wow. Okay.
Anyway,
Kenny Roberts
right.
Jr. is coming on as well.
Anyway, isn't he
Yes.
dead?
No, Kenny Roberts Jr. isn't dead.
Oh, it's Nicky Hayden. Sorry.
Yes.
Wrong American.
Wow.
Wrong American.
We've now insulted all the Americans as well. I know we'd already done
Brilliant.
that.
Add another country to the list of Wajid
Anyway.
hated countries.
Yeah.
It's not like
Anyway.
it's not like Trump's gonna let me in anyway. Wrong shade.
Oh, God.
Wrong shade. Wrong.
And on
religion.
that bombshell,
It's time to end.
Oh wow! I talk about my shade, and you talk about bombshells. Thanks, Paul.
This is not going out to the show. I am going to say that
Is it the one,
is
is it?
the end of race 24. I want
Yeah.
to say.
Five.
Race 25.
Race
Is
24.
it 24?
24.
24.
24.
No, 24.
I don't know. I've lost count now. Is it 24?
F1 race calendar.
It was 24. Don't worry. My
24.
brain.
Yes, it was 24.
Yeah, 24.
We did a review, I think, for every single one, which we didn't do last season. So this is a real
Well,
start of the podcast.
we didn't because we missed the first 4 races of the season.
We did, but that's because we hadn't technically started. But we did catch up with a
Anyway,
podcast, which is still short of a now.
Let's
Anyway.
just wind up.
Yes.
People
Next season. Next season starts March the 14th in Australia. Finally, back to where it should be. So March the 16th, technically, but practice is the 14th. We will be back
in 95 days' time.
Yes.
95 days. It is literally the shortest one ever. And for some reason, my computer's just told me that Yuki Tsunoda said it was great fun testing for Red Bull. Well, enjoy going back to BRB. Wajid, as always, thank you for joining us throughout the season. We know you will be joining us from different places next year. I mean, all over the place, basically. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, as always, my friends. It's always a pleasure.
And Paul came in a little bit late, and I don't just mean today. And
story of my life.
It's okay, don't worry.
Yeah, and we had it's great that we brought your knowledge on board with this podcast. Absolutely. Hopefully you'll be able to join us over winter for the array of different things. As many
as we can do.
Yeah, we're obviously going to talk about Lewis Hamilton. We'll talk about Max Verstappen's for World Championships. We might look at 2026 predictions as well. One time I want to do a bit of a quiz thing. Paul already started out on his stream today, I saw. So he might be quite good at that. Maybe we can even get some guests on, like Sean Kelly. He might actually stop running around the world for 2 seconds to come on the show. But yeah, thank you, Paul, for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And as always, if you haven't already followed the page, subscribe to the page, whatever you care to call it, on YouTube and Twitch, please do so. On YouTube, we are on 250 subscribers exactly. So that'd be nice if we could try and get that up over winter. And
we'll try to catch T series.
Sorry,
we're trying to catch T series of Mr. Beast in the next year. So
yeah, we should be able to catch Mr. Beast by round about summer next year. And on Twitch, obviously where we are also live, we're up to 459 followers. So if we can get that up to about 500, that'd be nice. But also, everyone who follows me on Twitch, why aren't you following me on YouTube? Get that sorted. Please click like on video if you've enjoyed what we've produced. And we will see you at some point very, very soon. It's very, very soon for different ones. And yes, the FIA one will happen because I know a lot of people's been asking for that one. So for now, it is goodbye.